Hi everybody, you're really welcome here this evening for our webinar, Anxiety-Based School Avoidance. Anxiety and school avoidance is increasingly becoming an issue and has increased further since COVID-19. We hear from many children and young people who contact us through Childline Listening Service about how they experience anxiety, and as a result of feeling anxious, they find it difficult to go to school. My name is Siobhan Harvey and I'm the Community Engagement Manager with the ISPCC. Also joining me this evening on the webinar is my colleague Niamh Clark, also a Community Engagement Manager, and Brie O'Neill, our Digital Support Coordinator and Clinical Lead. Brie is going to talk to you this evening about the term school avoidance and what it means. She'll also provide an understanding of why children and young people may avoid school and then look at providing you with some strategies and skills to cope with school avoidance. We'd really like to thank you all for being here with us this evening. In a moment, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what services ISPCC have on offer and programmes before I introduce Brie and we get into the main talk of this evening. We really hope that as parents and carers here this evening, that after tonight, that you'll go away feeling more knowledgeable on the topic of anxiety-based school avoidance and that you feel more empowered as a result. So before we hand over to Brie, I just want to go through a few housekeeping points and then a little bit about the ISPCC services. So firstly, you will have noticed that all participants have automatically been placed on mute with your cameras off, and it'll stay this way for the duration of the webinar. We will be having a Q&A session at the end, so if you do have any questions during the webinar, you can send them into the Q&A feature and we'll try to get to as many as possible. If we don't answer your question, please feel free to contact us afterwards and all our information and contact details will be shown at the end. Or you mightn't feel you want to ask a question here this evening and that's okay too. And just a reminder to everybody here this evening that this evening's webinar is being recorded and it will be made available on ISPCC digital platforms in the coming weeks. So ISPCC offer many universal services and programmes and they can be accessed anywhere in the Republic of Ireland. The one we're probably most known for is our Childline Listening Service, which is a 24/7 service available to all children and young people up to and including the age of 18, and this is via phone and online chat. We have our Ask the Team service for children and young people, where they can ask a question about anything they want. There's nothing too big or too small. And our Ask Robin service is similar, and it's for adults, where they can ask us a question on anything to do with parenting. Our Smart Move Schools Transition Programme, which aims to support the emotional resilience of children as they prepare to transition from primary school to secondary school. We have our SHIELD programme, which is ISPCC's proactive approach to tackling bullying, and it's designed to support schools, clubs and youth centres and any organisation seeking to prevent bullying before it starts. We deliver a huge amount of webinars, which are online presentations to support and educate parents and carers, where we allow participants to ask questions. Some previous webinars that we've delivered include online safety, anxiety, building resilience, keeping connected in the tween years, exam anxiety, and of course tonight, anxiety-based school avoidance. We have our Parenting Hub and our Digital Ready Hub, which is a modern, engaging and impactful platform, the go-to destination for parenting and digital parenting support. And it provides clear, expert-backed and up-to-date information and is designed to meet the evolving needs of parents. We also have our support line, which is a listening service offering information, advice and emotional support to parents and carers. And this opens Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. by calling 01 522 4300. In addition to these universal services, we do have more targeted support services for children and young people and parents who need additional supports. We can direct from our universal service into our more targeted supports where needed. So first off, we have our Childline Therapeutic Support Service, where this provides children, young people and families with therapeutic support. We can meet with children and young people where they're most comfortable, whether this is online, in their home, at a local community centre, or even in their schools. And we have this service in various locations throughout the country. Our Non-Violent Resistance Programme, often known as NVR, is a supportive programme provided by our Therapeutic Support Service for parents that are experiencing child-to-parent violence. We also have our digital mental health and wellbeing programs, which are aimed at reducing anxiety for children and young people, and digital programs for parents and carers around managing their own anxiety while supporting their anxious child and teen. And you'll hear a little bit more about that, I'm sure, throughout the evening from Brie. And finally, we're also delighted to say that Vodafone Ireland Foundation has partnered with DCU Anti-Bullying Centre and Childline by ISPCC to develop and launch a TOSY app. And this is aimed at creating a safer, more positive online space for young people. It aims to educate and empower them with the tools and advice that they need to have a more positive experience delivered through engaging features on the app. For more information on any of our services, please log on to www.ispcc.ie. Now I'd like to introduce you all to ISPCC's Digital Support Coordinator Clinical Lead, Bree O'Neill. And we're delighted to have you here this evening, Bree. Bree started her career in psychology in Cape Town in South Africa. After graduating cum laude and obtaining her honours degree in 2015, Bree gained experience in both individual and group counselling, as well as crisis and trauma counselling, where she devised and implemented treatment plans. Bree also worked in the private sector on a voluntary basis as a counsellor and researcher. She then fulfilled a lifelong dream when she moved to Ireland and obtained her master's degree in psychology from the University of Limerick in 2020. And since 2021, Bree joined the ISPCC and has played a pivotal role in the promotion, delivery and coordination of the digital mental health and wellbeing programmes. With both the professional interest in and a personal experience of anxiety, Bree strives to assist others in building their resilience, conquering fears and developing healthy coping mechanisms. And we're delighted to have Bree join us here this evening. You're very welcome, Bree, and I'm going to hand over now to you to take over from here.
Thanks so much for that kind introduction, Siobhan. You always make me feel very good about myself. It's a great way to start the evening. And I would also like to thank all of you for being here this evening. I know it can be really difficult to make time to join these events, but you've done that, and that's great. I'm going to start by saying school avoidance is a very complex topic. There is no magic silver bullet. But I sincerely hope you leave this webinar with a few more tools in your toolkit. So we'll move on to the next slide and have a look at what we'll be covering this evening. We'll start by looking at various definitions of school avoidance. We'll provide an understanding as to why your child might be finding attending school challenging. We'll then take a deep dive into the various strategies parents and carers can put into practice to cope with school avoidance. And we'll also provide some helpful tips about working with your child's school to manage the issue. And finally, as Siobhan mentioned, I'll introduce the ISPCC's Digital Mental Health and Wellbeing Program service, digitally delivered anxiety management programs which are aimed at parents and carers, as well as young people who experience anxiety. So moving on to our next slide. Before we move any further, I'd really like to acknowledge the way that many parents and carers may feel when experiencing school avoidance in the home. We know that the issue of school avoidance doesn't just affect the young person. It can have a negative impact on the whole family. Many parents, some of them here this evening, report feeling isolated and alone, as well as judged or misunderstood by others. Another thing we often hear from parents in this position is just how challenging it is striking the right balance between pushing the young person to face their fears and what it is that they are actually capable of facing. Of course, fears around repercussions of school avoidance feature highly for parents as well. Will TUSLA get involved? How will this affect my child's future and their options for further education? You're not alone in this experience, and you're certainly not alone in feeling this way. Many families across Ireland and beyond are facing the challenge of school avoidance. And just to put that into context, we had over 1,000 people register for this webinar, and there were 700 people on the waiting list. I would also like to point out that this webinar will be content and for some of us emotion heavy. So please do give yourself just a few minutes to process, bring yourself back into the room, and most importantly, be kind to yourself before rushing off to carry out the rest of your evening. So without further ado, like I mentioned, we'll be starting by looking at what we mean when we say things like school attendance challenges or school avoidance. And basically, this would be things like finding it difficult to get to school on time or frequently leaving school early, going to school but feeling incredibly anxious about it, and then being at school but maybe missing or skipping particular classes, or just not attending school at all. So moving to our next slide, we will be looking at more formal definitions. So the Clare School Avoidance Toolkit defines school avoidance as a systemic difficulty and refers to the student, parent or guardian, and school challenges, where the student finds it really difficult to attend or stay in school. The parent and guardian and school may find it difficult to support the young person, which often results in the request for the involvement of other services, like us, the ISPCC. Similarly, the Ross Commons School Refusal Resource Pack explains that school refusal behavior refers to the student's refusal to attend school or difficulty remaining in classes for the entire day. The problem is pervasive, and it exacts a heavy toll on students, families, and schools if left unaddressed. Now, what I really like about these definitions is that they acknowledge the difficulties that all involved, be it the young person, be it the parents and carers, and the school face. Because it's a genuinely challenging situation. So moving on to our next slide. Although school refusal or school avoidance can happen at any age, we see it most commonly in those between the ages of 5 and 7, and then again a bit later on between those who are 11 and 14 years of age. As I already mentioned, the young person refuses to attend school, but I think it's very important to highlight that the children often experiences significant distress, which is something that's often overlooked just in the general stress and worry of it all. So it's good to keep that at the heart of the matter. While many may use the words avoidance and refusal interchangeably, we prefer to use avoidance. It's because this kind of language leans more towards an issue that can be overcome using the correct techniques, such as graded exposure. Some of you might have heard that already. And it's actually a concept that we cover in our digital mental health and wellbeing program service, which, as I've said, I'll be introducing later on. So we'll move to our next slide, where we will look at early indications that your child may be struggling to attend school. Often there are many reasons that young people may not tell us directly that they're struggling. This could be because they don't have the language to share their feelings and experiences, or they may not know who the right person is to confide in. They do, however, show us that they are finding things tough. So the following are just a few ways that they may do so. You may notice some of them, you may not have any experience of others in our home, but things like not wanting to get up or not wanting to get ready in the morning, using delay tactics, or frequently showing signs of distress. This can be tearfulness or just protesting about having to go to school. Things like being angry, being upset, or acting out at school, on the way to school or at home, outright saying they can't go to school. I'm sure some of you have heard that. Often feeling sick, reporting stomach aches or headaches when going to school, but not doing so on weekends or holidays. Young people may be worrying about lots of small issues, or they have this preoccupation with being organized for schools, such as they have to have the right pens, the right copies, etc. You might notice that they're not sleeping well. There's a general withdrawing, such as being quiet or sad or just having a low mood in general. Not doing schoolwork or noticing a drop in their grades, disengaging from learning or even other activities at school that they kind of previously enjoyed. Not wanting to take part, or maybe a change in attitude towards school activities, events, subjects, or even particular teachers is another way that young people show us that they are struggling. We can move to the next slide, please. Many of us may ask, but why is school such a challenge for my child? I went to school, I didn't love it, but it wasn't the worst either. Well, there are numerous reasons, as well as even a combination of these reasons as to why young people struggle to attend school. So for some children, it can be a very overwhelming environment. There's bells, noises, shouting, people toing and froing, bright lights, and so on, that lead to an absolute sensory overload. Often young people feel weighed down with the demands to get involved and do well, and they just genuinely find it difficult to cope with that pressure. There may be particular classes that they see as unimportant or boring or too easy and not challenging enough, or on the flip side, confusing. And so understandably, they disengage. They may even experience learning difficulties that cause distress. On top of that, there are kind of everyday expectations that, like many of us adults, assume are easy to follow, but they may not be for some young people, such as constantly paying attention, being called on to answer or ask a question or read out loud at the drop of a hat. On the other hand, having to sit still, be quiet, and the list goes on. On the flip side, again, staying at home has many built-in rewards, right? You get to spend time with your parent. You can watch TV. You can play the video game that you love. And of course, staying at home means that you get to avoid the kind of emotional distress that comes with going to school. We'll carry on with the next slide. There are various stressful life events. I've listed them on the screen there that can impact school avoidance, as can fear, and be that something will happen to one of my loved ones while I'm at school, or fear that they won't do well, or even fear of a particular teacher that perhaps they haven't shared with you. It's often brought up by service users engaging in our digital mental health and wellbeing program service, that they are afraid to be physically ill at school. This is usually based on a previous experience that they've had where this has happened. Maybe they vomited in public. And being a young person, there's all the embarrassment and shame that sort of surrounds an experience like that. I touched on it already, but staying home means engaging in things that they enjoy way more. And finally, social challenges can play a really significant role in school avoidance. Many young people may experience bullying or isolation or exclusion at school. And just take a moment. Can you imagine how painful that must be? Feeling excluded, not having someone to sit with and talk to in class or at lunchtime, at a stage in their lives when social ties are so very fundamental to their development. We can move to our next slide, please. So to end off this topic of why school avoidance may occur, we're going to have a look at this diagram. It's a great way to show the kind of cycle of school avoidance, as well as the secondary factors that maintain the cycle. What we see here is a typical response to anxiety, avoidance. When something makes us anxious, we tend to avoid it, right? Which leads to a reduction in fear albeit temporarily. And quite naturally, that relief then brings on more avoidance of the situation that makes us sort of stressed out and anxious. By not facing our fears also means that we never get to test our competence, right? And what that does is shrink our confidence and our belief in ourselves to handle situations. So avoiding the situation provides temporary relief, and we also never get to really test our abilities in stressful situations. So when we put that together, it all adds to the anxiety, it all leads to more avoidance, and so forth and so on. And I think that really illustrates that it truly is a cycle. Luckily, cycles can be changed when we become aware of them. And again, it's something that's covered in our anxiety management service. If we can move on, now that we've looked at factors that sort of contribute to school avoidance, I'm sure you're all eager to really get to the meat and bones of it, to discuss factors that can help reduce the risk of school avoidance. So for one, a secure relationship with their parents, and that's whether the parents are separated or not. And parents that have a united, consistent, that's a key word here, approach, can really provide a protective factor when it comes to school avoidance. As well, having an understanding of anxiety, the factors that maintain anxiety, and also why it may be challenging for the child to attend school are incredibly beneficial for families when it comes to, and that's why we focus so heavily on it in that first part of this webinar, is understanding and awareness is the first step to change, to cutting into that cycle we've spoken about. Also, a child that actually has a sense of belonging in school is less likely to experience school avoidance. And adopting a cooperative approach amongst all those involved in supporting the young person will also help in reduce the risk of school avoidance. So moving on to our next slide. As I touched on earlier, some young people find it incredibly difficult to articulate what it is exactly about school that they are struggling with. And they find it, you may have experienced this in your home, tough to respond to kind of direct questions about what's going on. It's not uncommon for children to just not be able to identify exactly what it is they're feeling, especially in younger children. When these feelings began even, or why they feel a particular way about school. But once you and your young person understand the problem, though, you'll be in a much better position to make changes that help. The iceberg activity, which is on a video I'll play for you in just a minute, can be incredibly helpful. If you are making an anxiety iceberg with younger children, you might want to draw the images on the iceberg and then encourage them, if they're at this stage in development, just to write simple words on it themselves. Then for kind of older children, your teenagers, you can ask them to write the key words and phrases on the iceberg. Or again, if it's a teenager, you might want to do this as a mind map rather. So you can put school in the middle of the page you're working on, and then all the things that they're finding difficult kind of on the outside around school. I suggest when doing this activity, you try to create a relaxed atmosphere. Think of where you and your child chat most easily. Remember to listen attentively, be curious, and recognize that your child's feelings are valid. I also suggest using kind of open, non-judgmental statements. And by that, I mean things like, can you describe how you feel when you're at school? Or I wonder if you find school too noisy, too loud. We're going to play this video now. I also want to just point out that it touches on ways to help your child attend school, and I will be covering that later on in the webinar. So when you're ready there, Neve, if you could hit play, we'll watch the video. I just want to address, I see lots of messages coming through that you either not seeing the video or it's the volume is really low. It's working fine on our end, so I suspect when this is recorded or the recording is available, it should show up absolutely fine. But if you reach out, we can also send you the link to the video as well. So sorry if you weren't able to view that, but a lot of what was covered, I kind of touch on later on in the webinar as well. So we'll move on to the next slide. I'm glad to see it is working for a good few people. But like I said, we will have the recording. So carrying on with our strategies to help young people avoid school avoidance. We'll start by looking at using a collaborative approach, which can really work wonders. Communication and working collaboratively with everybody involved is really important when it comes to supporting the young person effectively. This involves presenting a united front and sticking to the plan. This might include you as parents and carers, the school's year head, various teachers, the principal, and guidance counselor. Think of it as you are all on a team and together you are facing a problem. Another one, very tricky to do, but eliminate positive reinforcement at the home. So at times and often inadvertently, a young person can actually receive signals that missing school is okay. Make sure to remove any fun reinforcing activities during the school day and set boundaries such as not allowing gaming or the phone during school hours when the young person has stayed at home that day. Establishing good routines. The value of a good sleep and a good routine cannot be underestimated. Establish and maintain good routines for bedtime. And what this means is regulating getting up, having breakfast, and going to bed times. Getting their uniform, their school bag, and any other necessities should be part of that routine and is generally best done the night before. Goal setting is another really handy thing to do. And when it comes to setting goals, work with your young person. Give them the chance to be involved in the solution. Identify the difficult parts of the school day and then work together to come up with solutions that can make these parts just that little bit easier. Young people at this stage may respond by saying something like, but everything at school is hard. And in that case, sit with them and write a list of the everything. Chances are they'll actually start picking up on bits that aren't so bad. We tend to do that as humans. We might have had a difficult Tuesday afternoon. Everything that could go wrong went wrong. And when somebody asks us on Friday, you know, how was your work? How was your week? We end up saying, oh, it was terrible. But when we narrow it down, we realize that really it was just Tuesday afternoon and now we've, you know, tainted the whole week that way. And young people really need help with this. So when you hear everything's awful and I just hate it, let's sit down, let's list all the things that are awful and that we hate about school. Then work with them to set realistic goals. And I really want to put emphasis there on realistic goals regarding school. And then once you've both come up with a goal, what you can do then is look at ways of breaking down that goal into small, easy to achieve steps, and then create the step-by-step plan that's most importantly easy to put into practice. Again, this is something that's covered in our digital mental health and wellbeing program service. I'm ready to go on to the next slide, please. Speak calmly with your young person. And I know this is not always easy to do, but it can help to maybe just prepare yourself, do some breathing exercises ahead of any conversations you're going to have with your young person. It's incredibly important for them to know that you understand. We all want to feel understood and heard. Encourage them to talk to you about how they feel, like using the iceberg exercise, for example. Be reassuring. How do we do that? By acknowledging that school attendance is very challenging for them and stating, and this is very important here, stating that you have faith in their ability to handle challenges. What I'm going to say next is a tough one. It is a fine line, but we need to avoid over reassurance. So, in other words, over reassurance is something, is reassurance that kind of inadvertently demonstrates that there really is something to be afraid of. Once you have reassured them, help them to take some slow, deep breaths. There are plenty of videos and resources online about the different breathing techniques you can try. These are super helpful. They work on your body on a physiological level. It really does help us get back into our rest and digest space within our bodies. Be persistent and keep trying to bring your young person to school. This is the right thing to do. And I know some of us really need to hear that, as hard as it can feel. Give your young person some positive self-statements. And I understand these can be incredibly cringy to do at first, but it does get easier with practice. We're looking at sayings like, I can do this, or I went to school yesterday and it was fine. Praise them for making the effort to go to school. Maybe they did get up that morning. Maybe they did get dressed on time and have their breakfast and get in the car, and then at school they just weren't able to. There are many steps there along the way that they did accomplish. They put effort into, and we mustn't forget those. Also, don't be afraid to model positive coping by using examples in your own life. Perhaps you had a presentation you needed to give at work, or there was a promotion you wanted to go for, but you were really initially afraid and anxious about it. Share that experience with your child. Share your feelings about the situation, and very importantly, what it is that you did to cope. And you don't have to have succeeded in your example. You may have gone for a promotion, went through the interview and didn't get it. But the important thing here is you didn't let your fear stop you. And modeling that behavior can be really valuable for young people. We'll move to the next one, please. Research shows that actually the most protective, the most influential factor in a child's life is a safe, supportive, and caring parent-child relationship. One of my absolute favorite phrases is connection before correction, and it's key. A safe, loving relationships allows you to help your child to develop the skills necessary to face life's challenges and to build their resilience. So I strongly recommend investing in your relationship with your young person. And we do that by prioritizing quality time together, doing mutually enjoyable activities. Show interest in your young person's hobbies and activities. And while you're doing that, be available to listen, to support, and to empathize when needed. Then once your relationship is on solid ground, and after having backs and forths about school avoidance, it wouldn't be surprising if things weren't quite where you would want your relationship to be with your young person. But doing these types of things does help to get it back on solid ground. And once you're there, tackling the problem of school avoidance as a team just becomes a lot easier. We can move on there, please. So I know as a parent and carer, it can be really hard at times to trust yourself to know what the right thing to do is. But remember, you are the one who has the knowledge and insight when it comes to your child. You are the expert. You're also absolutely allowed to advocate for your child, and their school has a duty to respond to your concerns. And we don't hear this enough as adults. It's really important that you take care of yourself. I always say you cannot draw water from an empty well. So reach out for support and guidance. You came here tonight. Rely on your friends and family and say yes to offers of help. It really does help mitigate any feelings of isolation and loneliness in the situation that you're facing. Thank you. We can move on. There are also a few practical steps that families can take to help make things easier. The benefits to having a set evening and morning routine as well as a good night's sleep cannot go overstated, which is why I'm mentioning this again. Having a routine helps to avoid the mad rush and panic to get out the door on time in the morning, and also, very importantly, helps to add predictability to the day, which is very beneficial, very soothing for those who experience anxiety. It may help young people if they can take something that soothes them to school. So this can range from a favorite plushy toy to Play-Doh to music if the school allows it. I'm a full-grown adult and I have a little plushy toy that I have in my handbag. When I'm feeling a bit anxious, I can pull it out. It's a lovely sensory thing for me. So no matter what age, it can be really helpful to have just these things that help soothe. Also, your child's school may already have a sensory room, which children can use when they're feeling overwhelmed or anxious. So please do approach the school and find out if that is an option for your young person. We'll move on. Thank you. Also consider the different things that may help your child unwind after school. Like, do they prefer to chat in the car on the drive home and tell you about their day? Or do they prefer having some quiet time with maybe just the radio on? I've mentioned this before in a webinar previously, but I really needed the quiet time in the car. I would have just been happy to have the radio on, just to have a few moments in the drive home to pull myself towards myself. And my poor, absolutely lovely mom was all a chat and would be asking questions. And really all it did was bring out the worst of 16-year-old me. You know your child. How do you think they would de-stress best after school? Another thing that we often forget to do is to remember to celebrate small achievements. These are really easy to overlook, but marking them can be very meaningful for young people. And I'm not talking lavish gifts here. Something like a heartfelt comment that shows you noticed. This will often do the job, whether it's a comment to their face or a little note left on their pillow. Another thing to consider is developing brains do not come with a stop button. It's hard to do, but it is up to us adults in the room to limit things like screen time and to kind of redirect focus onto something else that's could be exercise, it could be going out for some time in nature, which research shows is genuinely good for our mental health, or even family time, board games, maybe watching a show together, but you're together as a family. Also, don't hate me for saying this, but model the behavior you want to see in your teenager. So tune out of your phones and tune into your family. We'll go to our next slide. Moving on to those of us who already have our young people who are in the not attending school stage. While I understand that it can be really tough to do in situations that are just so worrying, try not to let things escalate to the kind of shouting, threatening, bribing stage. Sure, ultimately your child might end up going to school that day, but at what cost? Chances are they'll be too anxious, too overstimulated to actually meaningfully engage anyway. And it might end up doing some serious damage to your relationship with your child. So try instead to kind of show your child you understand, you empathize with their struggles. Again, reiterate your belief in their ability to cope, and always remind them that you will face this problem together as a team. Another helpful hint at this stage is to keep a record of all the steps both you and or the school have taken to kind of address the absenteeism. We recommend this because it can be incredibly valuable when seeking further support, such as out-of-school education provision. That record can really be your proof that you've tried everything else, you're all out of ideas. We need out-of-school education assistance at this stage. So we'll move on to our next slide. Again, I told you I'm going to keep coming back on this. We rely on routine here. So for the child who is at a stage of being unable to attend school, create a home learning routine that follows the school day as closely as possible. Remember, this would be a day that not only incorporates lesson time, but break times as well. Your school may provide homework. They might be doing that already. But you can also access the Department of Education and Skills for resources. That's really valuable. So please do have a look online for that. Another thing that we often forget is that outside of your typical school hours, do encourage your young person to socialize. It's such an important part of healthy development. And also, rather than them feeling isolated and alone, we do want the young person to feel a sense of connection and belonging with others, and if possible, with the school as well. So if there's an activity that your child enjoys doing, connect with the school to see if they can also, if they can still be involved with that activity, even if they're not attending lessons at the time. Also, to make life a bit easier, which we all want, you may want to speak with your employer about parental leave entitlements, working remotely, or flexible hours. I know this seems a daunting prospect, but actually many companies are well aware of the levels of anxiety and school avoidance in young people, and they may very well be supportive. I actually gave a talk recently at a really big company based in Dublin and Galway, because they are noticing attendance issues with their staff due to young people unable to attend school. So many companies are aware that this is a challenge that parents and carers are facing. We'll move on to slide 26. I think somebody was asking that. Don't be afraid to get your young person's school involved. They do have a duty of care, as I mentioned before, and there are a number of people you can contact about this issue. And this can be your child's favorite teacher, their guidance counselor. I recommend keep knocking on that door until it's answered. And also allow your child to be involved in the process. This really helps them to feel more secure. They feel like their opinions are being heard, and it also gives them a chance to have a say in what happens and how it happens. Go prepared. Have a list of things that your child finds challenging about school, and ask their teachers if they've noticed what your child struggles with when they're at school. Along with your young person, also identify things that might help them at school, and then share these ideas regarding the changes and kind of supports that can be put into place. I mentioned some ideas earlier, but this can be something like a quiet space, such as a library that they can retreat to, or sensory room, that they can just access during difficult moments. Another really nice idea is an exit card that they can just flash at their teacher that allows them to leave the lesson, no questions asked, if they become too anxious. It also takes away the having to put up their hand and ask, bring other students' attention on them. Flash the card to the teacher and they know they can leave and just take a moment to pull themselves towards themselves. What this does is give your child a sense of control when things get overwhelming. And even just having that little bit of control can be really helpful in getting them back to feeling comfortable at school. It's incredibly important to take note of the agreed changes and then to follow that up with an email afterwards. You're basically creating a paper trail, and it helps all involved to be accountable and to follow through on the plans that were made. As parents and carers, you can also ask for changes to be formalized in the way of an individual education plan. And if you haven't heard of this before, an IEP is basically a plan that schools can use to make sure that the person is given consistent adjustments kind of across all of their lessons. So it's not only a handful of teachers that know that your child may use an exit card, for example. It's everybody. And that allows your child an escape plan from every lesson as needed, and they're not going to be challenged on it. We'll move on to our next slide. So we're on slide 27. You can also ask the school to link your child with a peer buddy, a staff member, or just in general a safe person who checks in with them throughout the day. Once all of these plans have kind of been agreed to, you can arrange a date where you check in with the school and your young person to see if these changes are actually working, if they need to be adapted, or if they're working well, which is great. Remember, if you feel that the person you've been dealing with at school isn't helping, you can arrange to speak with another staff member, be it a head teacher, governors, or even the Academy Trust. And if need be, you do have the option of escalating to the Education Welfare Office, or EWO, from TUSLA. I know that sounds a bit scary, but they are there to help in situations like these. That's what that's their purpose. All right, we can go to our next slide. Now, if your child isn't attending school, remember, all is not lost. There are actually a small range of alternative educational services that can be availed of in specific circumstances. I will say this, they are not always easy to get into because school avoidance is such a big issue at the moment. They are very popular. So my best advice to you is to take all the steps that we've covered here today, ensure that you're keeping a log, and that helps you when you're showing your level of need when applying for these other options. So I mentioned the Department of Education and Skills before. They offer a home tuition scheme. iSchool as well provides an online learning service, and that's for 13 to 16-year-olds. And then you also have the Youth Reach program, which provides training and work experience to 15 to 20-year-olds. And you can find information about each of these online. I've heard parents give their own accounts on radio interviews before. So these are tangible options if you are in the stage of your young person is just unable to attend school at the moment. We'll move on to now to those who are feeling ready to head back into school. And there are a number of practical steps you as a family can take kind of just to ease the transition back. So to start, something like a reduced timetable can be really helpful for the young person. It just gives them time to kind of find their feet and then settle back in without too much pressure of the full day. As they feel more settled, you can slowly increase the number of days or hours spent at school. But I do recommend doing that as slowly as possible. We don't want to overload them and then really halt or set the process backwards. You can also start, you may start even before they start attending lessons. You might get them to start taking part in activities that they've traditionally found enjoyable at school, things that are rewarding, things that enable them to experience success. Experiencing success goes a really long way towards increasing their confidence in their own capabilities. And that's a large part of what anxiety is not trusting myself to cope with the challenges, but engaging in a sport or a club at school that makes them feel good can be really helpful in building their self-esteem. Young people who haven't been able to attend school for a while may feel that they are behind their peers after having missed so much schoolwork. So work with your school to help them to address any gaps in knowledge. And this will help them to kind of avoid feeling inadequate or behind and insecure. And again, it helps to increase their own sense of competence. So we'll move on. We are at the end is in sight, guys. I'm at the stage in our webinar where I'd just like to take this time to introduce you to our digital mental health and wellbeing program service, which is aimed at parents and carers of 5 to 18-year-old young people who experience anxiety, as well as 15 to 18-year-old teenagers who experience anxiety. Moving to our next slide. We'll see that our programs were developed by SilverCloud, who are leaders in online wellbeing programs, and were developed in conjunction with psychologists and psychiatrists. They are based on cognitive behavioral therapy, which you may have heard of. It is the most studied talk therapy in the world at the moment, which means that it's constantly being bettered. It's an evidence-based therapy that can really have meaningful impacts for people. What our service aims to do is to empower our service users to think and feel better. And they do this by putting what they are learning into practice regularly with cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. That's where the magic happens, is putting it into practice. Our service is accessed easily from home via any smart device. Our programs are interactive, they're engaging, and they make good use of things like quizzes and video and audio clips and various other activities. A trained ISPCC volunteer supports our service users through the program, and they're there to ensure that the content is understood and practiced regularly, and just in general to provide motivation, feedback, and a listening ear, because it's a tough thing managing anxiety. I would like to boast a little quickly across all 3 programs, based on ratings given by our clients for each module. We currently have a client satisfaction rate of 97%. So we know that they work. We are seeing reductions in the distress that's associated with anxiety. So to find out more about our service, please do visit our website. We have an expression of interest form that you complete, or you can request a call back and we'll give you a call. We'll have a chat about the service, see if it's a right fit. Alternatively, you can email us on spacefromanxiety@ispcc.ie. We'll email you a referral form or post it out if you prefer, as well as our brochures, and those can be emailed and posted back. We have no wait list, and you can start your program within 14 days of us receiving the completed referral form. So I would just like at this point to say thank you so much for listening. I know there was a lot of content there, but I hope you found this webinar beneficial. And if you leave with nothing other than you're not alone and there is support, then I've won this evening. And I'll hand over to Neve and Siobhan.
Thank you, Bree. That was an amazing session tonight. I'm hoping that everybody watching at home took as much from it as I did listening to you. I thought really that key message you were saying about thinking about the issue as everybody being on one team and working together was really, really helpful. And I'm sure there's a lot of people listening tonight that will feel that just hearing those kind of words can be quite empowering and helpful. And also that message, like it's a very simple message that you can give your child that they can have faith in your child that they can handle that challenge as well. It's such a simple, positive step that you can start at home quite simply, you know, whatever is going on. So best of luck with everybody, and I hope everybody gets the support they need. We're going to share a quick and anonymous form that's up there on your screens now. This is just to gather your feedback. And we'd really appreciate you taking a few moments to complete it as it pops up there now. And we've also shared it in the Q&A section as well. And we will be sending around an email after this webinar this evening to gather your feedback on the webinar as well, and to let us know if there's other webinars, other types of topics you'd like us to cover. So Bree, there's lots of thanks spilling in there for you, and that's fantastic. Great feedback there. We are just going to move on to the Q&A now in a second. But just before we do that, I just want to remind you of some of the supports and contact details that are offered by the ISPCC to parents and carers. And these details are up on screen there. So we have our support line on 01522 4300. That's Monday to Friday, 9 to 1. We have our Ask Robin service as well, our parenting hub and digital remedy hub, and then not forgetting our Tozy app, which is for the young people to download onto their phones as well. So that's the Vodafone app as well. Sorry, the Tozy app, sorry. So we're just going to move on to a couple of questions, Bree, if you're ready. Yes, fantastic. So there was a lot coming in. The chat box was open and it actually wasn't supposed to, so I might have to hop between the two. Sorry, the first one here is, hi, my 15-year-old is on a reduced hours at school. Typically she goes in at 11 a.m. and stays for the rest of the day. She doesn't get notes from the classes she misses, and I'm afraid she'll never catch up, and she's just so stressed when it comes to her junior cert next June. Thank you. So I suppose just any comments you might have on that.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic that she's got that reduced timetable. I'm going to assume, because you have that you have a dialogue with the school, and I really feel that this is something that could be addressed with the school, knowing that I can't remember if you said junior cert or leaving cert, but knowing that pardon?
Junior cert.
Knowing that junior cert year is coming up, I think it's a great segue into a conversation saying, look, we're really happy that we're getting the reduced timetable. It's proving to be incredibly helpful for our child, but we're a bit worried about not being at the same level academically. We want to be prepared. What can you do to help with this? So I wouldn't be afraid to advocate for your child, speak to the school. As I said earlier, keep knocking on that door. They do have a duty to respond to what it is that you need. And then again, I mentioned it earlier, if you have a look at the, I've forgotten the name now, just excuse me, the education website, where there are resources that you can access that should be able to help bring your daughter up to speed as well. It's the Department of Education and Skills. They have plenty of resources there that will hopefully help bring her kind of back on par with her peers.
Thanks, Bree. Thank you. There's another one here. What are best practical strategies to tackle exclusion, isolation because of perceived spoken language or ethnic difference? This is in relation to a 14-year-old daughter.
That's incredibly difficult, and just to bring it back to the developmental stages, teenagers are in a stage which can be very painful for parents, but I promise it's an absolute thing that we all need to go through, and it's a very helpful thing, a healthy thing when they start to pull away from parents and start to kind of lean into their social groups. And a lot can be missed if that's not happening for the young person. So again, if it's a language barrier, I would start looking at the resources that the school can offer to help bridge the gaps in knowledge there. Again, there are many options online that help with language learning. And it's incredibly hard for any young person to be different in any way. They, as much as they want to be unique personalities, they also hate standing out. So I think embrace the resources available to you in terms of language learning, just to bridge that gap, and hopefully that will that will help your young person to start integrating. Alternatively, to kind of hurry the process along, are there any things that your young person is interested in that doesn't necessarily rely on language? There's sports that they can do together, where if everybody knows the rules of the game, there doesn't have to be too much discussion around it. So look at things like that. Another great option is theatre at school, or joining the choir at school. That can be really helpful in picking up languages quickly.
Thanks, Marie. That's great. So kind of just looking for alternative ways that you might be able to engage with the language to help it come on, and help her feel a more sense of belonging as well within her peer group. Okay. This relating to a younger child. So my daughter is 6 and clings to me at the gate each day. I try the goodbyes at home where we hug, kiss and say goodbye. She goes in, but she may do this once a week at the odd time. Any tips for this type of avoidance?
So it sounds like it's not an everyday thing, but a once a week thing. I'm a big believer in awareness is key. So I would start taking note just as an observer. You're not judging, you're being a detective at this stage. What is different about those mornings? And you can go as far back as the night before. Did we stick to our routine? Were there any difficulties with bedtime? Did we get enough sleep? Have we had our breakfast? And then later on into the day, is it a particular day at school? Is there a particular activity that is causing the fear around school? So I would aim to gather as much knowledge as possible around the days that are causing issues, because then you can address those particular things. Again, when she is in, your young person is in a heightened state, I can't overemphasize things like breathing techniques, grounding activities. She's 6 years old, a wonderful way to get young people to kind of get their parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for our fight or flight reflex, to calm that down, to get it back into the rest and digest way of being, which is the calm state, is to blow bubbles. They don't even know that they're focusing on their breath, and it's a fun activity to do, and that can be something she starts doing in the drive to school already. And you compare that with, what are you looking forward to at school today? I can't wait to hear about it when you get home. Look at self-soothing techniques. So we have the bubble. Young people giving themselves a hug. It cannot be overestimated how helpful that can be. And then also maybe talk to the teacher about bringing the soothing items that I mentioned earlier, be it a cuddly toy, Play-Doh, etc. But long story short, I would look at what is different about those days and use that information to help put steps into place to help her deal with the thing that's making her anxious on those particular days.
Okay, thank you, Bree. It's I love the idea of the bubbles. It's such a simple way again, and they don't
And
even know
fun.
that they're doing it, and fun. Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Another one here for a 15-year-old who is struggling to make friends. All her past friendships have broken down, and she's become so isolated that she will not reach out or try any suggestions that have been put to her in terms of school clubs or activities. She finds an obstacle to all suggestions put to her, all coming from fear for sure, but so debilitating that she is so stuck. That's a difficult one.
Bless her, and especially at that age. And you know what? If you feel knocked back every time, and it can be really hard to put yourself out there, I would come back to focusing not on how are we going to, what steps can we do yet. Let's have a look at the positives of friendship. So we're taking out the difficult bit of getting there, but what is it that we gain when we do have a friendship group? And I think focusing on all the good that can come out of it will help soften the blow of the challenge of getting there. So let's start with that. Also look at ways to build her self-esteem. And once we've looked at the good things about having friends, all the ways it can change her life for the better, then start looking at the steps you can take to form a social group. A thing that we use in our anxiety management programs is, again, the graded exposure that I mentioned. It consists of a facing fears ladder. So basically, you choose a fear you want to conquer or a goal you would like to achieve. And you look at the steps you can take to achieve those goals. Now, I know she's hesitant, but have a look at if she had to. We're not saying she has to, but if she had to, what is the smallest, least anxiety-inducing thing she can do that leads to conquering her fear of making friends or achieving her goal of making friends? And that's your first step. The thing with graded exposure is that it takes time. It cannot be rushed, cannot be done overnight. So we start with that first step that causes the least amount of anxiety, and we repeat that until no anxiety is felt. So that might be watching videos on how to make friends. That's a relatively pain-free, emotionally distant thing that we can start looking at. And then once there's no anxiety felt, we move on to the next step and the next step and so forth. So that's one way. Again, reassurance. I have faith in your ability to do this. You've handled horrible things before, and I know you can do it. And then just to add, we actually have one of a mini module in our anxiety management program that deals with this very thing, friendship groups and handling our friendships in a healthy way. She's of the right age, so I really do encourage you to go to the website, have a look at the program. You might be interested in taking part, and the two of you together with the skills learned in the program, you really might be able to help build her confidence around making friends.
Thanks, Bree. I'll just do one final one because we are gone way over time, if that's okay. So this is the last one, but if people do want to reach out onto our support line or to email us, I'll put up details after this. So I have an 8-year-old boy who hates going to school, uses delay tactics and complains of soreness in bellies and head, tends to come home from school early a lot as he would be up and down to the teacher complaining of not feeling well. Teacher says that she sees no red flags and he's sociable, well able. Have you any ideas what might be causing it, or even steps to take? And just they go on to say that he's very, very emotional upon returning from school, but no reason for such big emotions that he tells us.
Okay. Again, I would go back to kind of the steps I've listed earlier, things like sticking to a routine. I would liaise more with his teacher there. I mean this in the best possible way. Maybe speak to her about having a closer look at what it is, because there is something that's causing some anxiety about attending school. So maybe ask her, do the stomach ache complaints come when at a particular time in school? Again, awareness is key. So start looking at the routines. Then again, I mentioned what happened the night before, what happened in the morning. Are there particular triggers in school? And then also look at what it is he's missing when he doesn't stay at home. There might be some separation anxiety there. Might be that he's not, he doesn't feel very comfortable leaving the home, leaving his parents and going to school. So at this stage, with the limited information I have, I would seek to gather more information. Try the iceberg activity. It might really help narrow or hone in on the particular things that's causing his fear around school. Once we have a better idea, we can start looking at ways to make those particular things easier for him at school. He might be one of those who doesn't show that he's overstimulated. He feels like there's demands on him. So I think at this stage, do perhaps some more information gathering, consider the idea of separation anxiety, and then take it from there. Again, I have to say it because I can't tell you how passionate I am about my service, because I know it can help. I know it is changing dynamics in families. Have a look at our program. Our Supporting an Anxious Child program might really be helpful for you and your family.
Thank you, Bree. And can I just ask you one final? I do see there was a lot of around ASD diagnosis. Is the program, or can the program be beneficial for young people, or is it just that they have to send in the referral and the team will assess it on a case-by-case basis?
We do assess on a case-by-case basis, but in saying that, we have had both young people who have an ASD diagnosis engage in our service, as well as parents and carers of young people who have an ASD diagnosis. So it can be really beneficial. I would just like to point out it deals with anxiety only. So it cannot help with other problems that are going on, but anxiety often goes hand in hand with things like ADHD or those on the spectrum. So I think it can be really helpful. Have a look at what is on offer for you. See if you think it would be a good fit. Send in your referral. We'll go through it and take it from there.
Thanks, Bree. That's great. I'd like to say a big thank you to all of you watching and giving up your time this evening and joining us here. If you have any questions or you just want to chat to somebody, please do reach out to us at the Community Engagement team. And our numbers are on screen there, or sorry, our email addresses are on screen there now. Just to remind you all that the webinar is recorded and will be made available on our ISPCC digital platforms as well. So what's left to say now is good night to everybody and have a lovely evening. Bye.